Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. Today's guest is Pamela Cass, a performance coach, cancer survivor, and co-author of The Quiet Gift. Her journey is a powerful one. She spent years feeling invisible due to dyslexia only to climb the corporate ladder to an executive role. But as she shares, that success on paper left her feeling completely burned out, empty, and disconnected from her purpose. She made the courageous choice to walk away from it all and completely start over, turning her story of invisibility into a mission to help others feel seen, heard, and valued. So, Pamela, it's a real pleasure to have you on FailCraft. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's dive in. Your story is so powerful. You talk about feeling invincible growing up with dyslexia and then experiencing executive burnout, feeling successful on paper but running on empty. So, can you take us back to these moments for you? So, how did it feel like having these setbacks and burnout?
Yeah. So I'll start with the dyslexia because I was diagnosed very age. I was 7, and this was in the 70s. And in the 70s, they knew what dyslexia was. They knew how to test for it. But if you were in a small rural school, they really didn't have any tools or anything for you. And so what that meant was I was pulled out of the classroom whenever they were doing any type of reading or vocabulary or spelling. And when you do that to a child, you pull them out of a classroom of their peers, then you're not making the friendships and the bonds and the connections that most kids get to make at that age. And so I got to a space where I wanted to be invisible in the classroom because I didn't want people to think I was different. And so that really played through most of my childhood. And it wasn't until I was in junior high, my dad signed me up for a public speaking class. And this was for a teenager, for a 13-year-old in the 80s, braces and, bad hair and all the stuff that happens in the 80s with us and being in junior high where you're awkward anyway. And this was a class that was designed for adults. And so I would show up to these meetings and it would be adults that just finished their workday. And we had to get up in front of the group and speak about our life. And I was 13, I think I had a life to share. And what Dale Carnegie was all about was speaking from just your authenticity, sharing stories about yourself. And it
Mm,
really wasn't until like the last session, because this went on for weeks, the last session I shared the story and I shared in the book that I used to hide in the closet when I was little because I was hoping that my parents would notice that I was missing and they would try to come find me. And they never did. And so it just kind of made me feel like, oh, see, I want to be invisible at school, but at home I want to be seen and I wasn't seen at home. And so it just was all those stories that you create. So when you have dyslexia, you tend to overcompensate for your disability by overworking because you feel like you have to prove yourself all the time. You have to prove that you're meant to be at this table. And so when I was moving up the ranks in a very male dominated industry, I didn't feel like I was worthy of being at the tables with these people. And so when I became the vice president, so I was second in charge, and I was working 7 days a week, and I absolutely hit a burnout wall where I just couldn't do it anymore, and it was impacting my health. And so I had to make the decision. I was a single mom, to walk away from six figure and try to figure out how I was going to support myself or stay in this position and potentially impact my health, and it may not be reversible. And so that was terrifying, but it was one of those things that it was more important for me to be around for my kids and be around for whatever my purpose was in the world than to stay in a position where I was completely burnt out.
wow, that is indeed an inspiring story, Pamela. So, what did that executive burnout actually feel like? You had the title, the success. So, what was the disconnect from purpose you were experiencing?
Yeah. So, I was suffering from high blood pressure, which I had never had before. And high blood pressure, I was at stage 2 hypertension, which can cause strokes and heart attacks and all of that. I was working literally from the time I got up in the morning until the time I went to bed. I wasn't sleeping. I was always feeling like I needed to be on. I wasn't spending time with my kids. I wasn't spending time with my family. I wasn't taking care of my health. I wasn't working out. I wasn't doing any of the things that I used to do that I loved because I was so obsessed with having to work and that title and prove myself that I just let all of the things go. And when we start letting go of all the things that are really important to us and we're just focused on that one singular thing, it can cause damage for the rest of your life. It can damage relationships. It can damage your health. It can damage really everything. And so it was, it was one of those things that was kind of a wake up call for me that I was like, I have to change something or it's not going to be reversible.
Hmm. All right. So you say that resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about rising differently. So what does rising differently mean to you based on that experience of rebuilding?
Yeah. So when you have been doing something continually year after year after year,
Mm.
your brain creates these neural pathways and they kind of become your autopilot. And so when you try to change and step away from something, your body wants to go back to what was normal. This is why people that are in abusive relationships usually end up in another abusive relationship. It's just because that's what our autopilot is. It's what's familiar, it's what's comfortable for us. And so rising differently is recognizing what was, what didn't work, and then leaning into what your values are. And so when I coach people, one of the very first things we go through is identifying what their values are. What are the things that are important to them? And a great activity for people to do is write down their name, how old they are today, how old they're going to be in 10 years, and then do that for other people that are important to you. So your significant other, your children, your parents, your dog, whatever. How old are they today? How old will they be in 10 years? When you see that, it's very eye opening to you how quickly life goes by. And sometimes you'll write down that you've got a 10-year-old grandson and he's going to be 20 in 10 years and he's going to be out of the house and probably not want to spend any time with you. And if you have parents that are 80, they may be 90, but they may not be here in 10 years. And so it allows you to shift that purpose of what's truly important for me. Because there's not many people that are going to put on their tombstone, I wish I worked more. What they'll say is, gosh, I wish I had spent more time enjoying life, sitting and watching sunsets, reading books to my kids, going on walks on the beach, just things like that that just really rejuvenate our soul and allow us to be fully present. When I got diagnosed with cancer, one of my friends asked me the question. She goes, have you been fully present in your life? And I couldn't answer that question, yes, because I hadn't been. I had been on that corporate treadmill. I'm just working all the time. And I was missing my kids growing up and I was missing time with friends. So it's really about being present, knowing what your values are, and then being very aware when you start to creep back to that autopilot and noticing this looks like something I used to do before. I need to set some boundaries and get back to the new purpose that I have in my life.
Right. So your book, you're the co-author of a book, The Quiet Gift. The book seems to tie back to that feeling of being unseen. So how did you learn to reframe those quiet spaces and your dyslexia not as a weakness, but as a strength?
It's really interesting. So growing up trying to be invisible in school and spaces like that, I did not want anybody to know I had dyslexia. So that
Mm.
meant I worked extra hard to just not have to do anything different. I didn't want to be in special classes. I didn't want to have somebody go to college with me and take notes and help me do all that stuff. So I very much wanted to blend in. In blending in, what happened is I literally convinced or rewired my brain to believe that I didn't have dyslexia anymore. And I was speaking in front of a group. There was about 100 people in the room, and I was going to talk about our brain and the power of our mind. And I was going to share for the very first time in public that I had dyslexia. And the morning of the presentation, I was like, you know what? I don't think I have dyslexia anymore. I'm sure I cured myself. And so it was before ChatGPT. So I went on Google and just typed in, can you cure dyslexia? And it said, no, you cannot. And so I was like, I still have dyslexia. So I started to do more research about dyslexia. And what I found is that people that are dyslexia have a lot of gifts and they are extremely resilient because they've had to adapt to fit in into society. They are extremely empathetic because they typically have had challenges their entire life. They can think outside of the box. So when people get stuck on finding solutions, people with dyslexia can often find creative other ways to do things. And so what I realized is where I'd gotten to in my life and the success I had had, and the success was very quick, it was all because of dyslexia. So then I started reframing how I look at dyslexia, and dyslexia is not a disability, even though it's labeled that way. It truly is a gift. And 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. And
Mm.
what's interesting that is there are many, many people that have never been diagnosed with it. So they don't know they have dyslexia. So if you are a teacher or if you are in a leadership position, chances are there is somebody in your classroom or more, or in your boardroom or in your company that have dyslexia. And so if you can tap into what their gifts are and tap into what everybody's gifts are, because people without dyslexia have just as many gifts. If you can tap into that, you can build a team, you can build a classroom that's going to be unstoppable. And so the goal with this book is to really try to reframe how we look at dyslexia as not being a disability, but truly a gift.
Wow, wow, wow. That is indeed a very unique, interesting perspective. So, your philosophy says burnout isn't failure, it's feedback. So, what was the core feedback your burnout, was giving you that you had been ignoring?
The things about my body. So I wasn't sleeping. I had frequent headaches. A lot of times I would be unmotivated to do just normal things like take care of things around the house. I didn't want to go do things with friends that I normally wanted to do. And it's interesting because what I've learned over the years is that we are terrible at listening to our bodies. We kind of just say, oh, it'll be fine. I'll take an Advil, drink some water, it'll be good, but we don't listen to our bodies. And
Yeah.
oftentimes we don't our bodies until we hit a wall or we end up having a stroke or a heart attack or something terrible happens. And then we have this wake up call. So if people can start to recognize it before it happens and really slow down and fully be present, then they can, prevent that burnout from happening, prevent themselves from getting to that space. On our podcast, we interview a lot of people, and some of the common themes are I'm just burnt out and this is what I'm doing now. And now I'm taking care of myself. So it's a very common theme I think it's our society. Our society very much rewards that go, 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 go instead of the slow down. And that's, at least in America, that's how it is. It is very much you are rewarded for how hard you work, how many hours you work, not how healthy you are. And so we need to change that.
All right. So you host the Reignite Resilience podcast. So
Mhm.
what have you learned from talking to others about their burnout that surprised you or confirmed your own experience?
Gosh, that it's more common than I thought it was,
Hmm.
that I think more people probably have some sort of burnout than not. And what I've loved about the podcast and interviewing so many different people is just seeing how they have taken that challenge that they faced with burnout or whatever that is. And they've created a purpose out of it. And they're using that to help educate other people and help other people maybe not go through what they had to go through. And so it's been a really beautiful journey and a validation that I'm not alone in what I was feeling and what I was going through.
Okay, fantastic. So for the person listening right now who feels just like you did, successful on paper but running on empty and feeling disconnected. So what is the first practical step you'd recommend they take?
Yeah, the first practical step would be to identify what your values are. So your values could be health, it could be family, it could be faith, it could be whatever, knowledge, wisdom, whatever, that you can come up with whatever. If you Googled, give
Hmm.
me a list of core values, I recommend people print out a list of however many core values you can print out, circle your top 10, and then start whittling it down until you get to your top 5 and then get to your top 3. And usually those top 3, that gives you your basically your roadmap for how you should be doing things. And so if family is one of your core values and you look at your schedule for the week and you have no family time, you're not doing dinners with your family, you're not spending time with your family or your friends, then you're not in alignment with your core values, which causes friction in your life. And when we have friction, it can cause that burnout because we just feel exhausted and guilty. And so identifying the core values is probably the key. And then your schedule should reflect those as your priorities. So you should have family time on your calendar before anything else. If health is important to you, you should have your workouts, your healthy eating, whatever, that should be on your schedule before anything else. And then fill the other stuff in. But the core values have to come first. Or what's the purpose for what you're doing?
All right. All right. So, Pamela, after this entire journey of reinvention from feeling invisible to finding your voice and purpose, so what does being successful truly mean to you now?
To me, today, being successful means providing value to people with no expectation of anything in return. And
Hmm.
so whether I'm coaching somebody or whether I'm speaking to a group of people or I'm inspiring somebody through our book or on our podcast, that's what success means to me. If I have ended my day and I have made a difference in somebody's life, whether it's inspired them or prompted them to change something in their world, then that's success. It's not about the money. It's not about, yeah, it helps. We got to pay our bills, but that's more important to me than anything else. So that's success.
All right. So for our listeners who want to connect with you, get the Quiet Gift, your book, or book that free one-on-one coaching call, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, the best place is just go to my website. So it's Pamela at PamelaCass.com and you'll find everything. There's a link to buy the book. There's a link to book a free call with me. There's a link to book me to speak. There's a link to our podcast and you can sign up for our weekly think letter that we send out and that's all complimentary. So yeah, go there. They can find everything.
All right, Pamela. It has been such an insightful conversation with you, and I am really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.